All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Leanna, and on behalf of ACT, the App Association's Amplified Diverse Talent Working Group, welcome to Celebrating Girls in Tech, creating space for the next generation of innovators. We are super duper excited to be here with you in honor of the International Telecommunication Union's Girls in Information, Communication, and Technology Day, also known as Girls in ICT Day. The App Association represents thousands of small business software developers and technology companies that create the apps we use on our smart devices. The app community we represent is valued at approximately $1.7 trillion and is responsible for 5.9 million American jobs. The science, technology, engineering, and mathematics workforce make important contributions to improving our nation's housing, economic growth, and global competitiveness, fueling innovation through their work in research, development, and more. However, it's no secret that girls and women are systematically tracked away from science and math throughout their education, limiting their access, preparation, and opportunities to go into these fields as adults. So today we'll hear about the experiences from our dynamic panel of entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and innovators that have forged successful careers in the STEM world. But first, to get the conversation started, I am joined by our fearless leader here and Executive Director at the App Association, Chelsea Thomas. Hi, Chelsea. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so excited to be here. So we know there are over 500,000 unfilled computing jobs with a starting salary just under six figures. When we look at the breakdown of who is filling these jobs, we see that women only make up about 28% of the STEM workforce, which aligns with how many men vastly outnumber women majoring in most STEM fields in college. Even more alarming, the Bureau of Labor Statistics projects more than 1 million STEM jobs will be added over the next decade, representing nearly 11% growth compared to less than 8% for all other industries. With this in mind, Chelsea, and in your experience as Executive Director of the App Association, what would you say is the greatest barrier to building an inclusive STEM workforce?
Well, as you know, we have long advocated for Congress to focus on national comprehensive computer science education to improve the career options for folks who are hoping to enter the app economy. It's one of our members' favorite things to mention when they're talking to members of Congress and other regulators, because it impacts them so deeply. And the fact of the matter is that the 21st century economy requires a workforce equipped with critical thinking training that lays the groundwork for coding and information management skills. Unfortunately, our education system is failing to keep pace with the growing demand for American workers with computer science backgrounds and qualifications. In fact, today, only 47% of all high school classrooms teach computer science skills, and there continues to be a lack of diversity within those classes, particularly for female and minority students. And if you're looking at barriers beyond STEM education, we see the need for reliable broadband across the board so that students can access webinars like this, as well as free or reduced cost coding courses. Unfortunately, according to even the most conservative estimates, nearly 15 million Americans currently lack access to broadband connections, leaving them on the wrong side of the digital divide. And this isn't a hypothetical problem. During the pandemic, we saw kids doing their homework at Taco Bell because they didn't have reliable internet at home. In order to reach these underserved Americans across the country, the federal government needs to bolster the deployment of needed infrastructure based on the most accurate data available and support legislation that takes steps to fund and support broadband infrastructure and access.
Right. And despite the concerns you just outlined, in what ways are you seeing folks in the app economy evolve to create space for disenfranchised communities, whether it's gender, race, or any other underserved community?
Well, it's been refreshing to see the way thoughtful leaders and organizations in this space have come together to be more inclusive. We've seen this happen in a lot of different ways, but I'd like to highlight some of the most empowering. First, there's been a huge shift in the way that we as a society talk about careers in STEM and STEAM, and the way that we encourage kids to be curious. For example, just this weekend, my daughter, who attends kindergarten at a STEM school here in DC, was helping me to assemble a planter. And she declared that she was an engineer. And that's not something I would have ever thought about when I was a kindergartner. And we're seeing kids at the early stages of their education understand that these are career paths that are open to them. And that's so exciting. And second, as folks in the industry continue to be more inclusive, we've seen a shift in hiring practices and ways to recruit more diverse talent so that as many voices and viewpoints are represented as possible. We see this through one of our amazing member companies, Study, a platform that identifies, trains, and connects ethnically diverse tech talent with leading companies in our industry who value things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also, something that we really value here at the App Association is work-life balance. And you might be wondering how this means anything when it comes to closing the gender gap. But we often see caregiving responsibilities falling to women on top of the 9-to-5 that they and their partners have. It's incredibly empowering and exciting to see our industry lead and embrace remote work and more flexible hybrid schedules to support these caretakers. And I'm sure you're going to hear from our amazing panel about all of the ways that they're engaging in this issue as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And definitely on the work-life balance, a huge key there. And speaking of work-life balance, how can workplaces and communities across the US better usher in the next generation of leaders in STEM?
It's a great question. I think, 3 in 4 women who stayed in tech careers have role models, compared with 56% of those who have left. So supporting those who are just getting started with formal help like mentors, role models, and sponsors is so important. And that's why we're proud of member companies like Global Force Tech for Girls, an organization that works to empower young women of color to succeed in tech careers through education, mentorship, and career development. Also, general accountability when it comes to keeping each other in check. For example, you can do a great job at hiring women or diverse people, but what does retention look like? If you see high turnover, it may be time for a vibe check, retaining diverse employees through purposeful inclusion. Inclusion is embedded or not in company culture, and this is where every employee feels valued, respected, and able to contribute. Diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and programs affect job selection decisions for more than half of candidates, according to recent research. Unfortunately, most women do not feel fully included. 3 in 4 women in technology jobs told the Pew Research Center that they experience gender discrimination at work. And finally, it's important to just keep having the conversation in as many venues as possible. In addition to advocating for legislation that boosts workforce development efforts, we've hosted events at colleges in West Virginia and Louisiana, and we're working with the Congressional App Challenge to have these conversations with middle and high school students around the country. And that's why I'm so excited about today's event and this panel, because we get to keep having the conversation. So thanks, Leanna. It's really exciting to be here, and I'm excited to hear the next panel.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again for helping us really get this conversation started. And I'd like to now turn to our panel to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of how they each started in their respective fields. If it's okay, can I start with Rachel?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today and for expressing interest in an area that I am so passionate about. My name is Rachel Troveman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Upside Health. We're a software company that's dedicated to transforming the way that chronic pain is assessed and treated. It's an issue that I've experienced firsthand and was able to understand the pain points of pain care and had the skill set in order to make that change. I had a career in journalism, actually, prior to starting this company. I was a news producer for 15 years, but I was always on the digital side of things. And a lot of it came almost as a fluke by just being someone to always raise my hand and say yes, and to not give up on or not take opportunities. So my first job in news was as a web writer. And the reason I took the web writer position was because it paid more than the regular writer position. And it was a connection I was able to make. And a lot of people didn't want to take that web writer job because they assumed it was a lot of coding, or it was too far away from the traditional news job they wanted. What ended up happening is obviously web journalism became journalism, and I was able to get my hand, feet, whole body in every component of news, but also had a great deal of exposure to everything else that happened in technology. And those skill sets then allowed me to transfer as I built a software company in a very different vertical.
Excellent, thank you. Kanisha, my lovely sorority sister, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Leanne. Hi, everyone. My name is Kanisha Dennis. I am the founder of Black Girls Can Incorporated, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization helping to foster the next generation of Black girl talent in the areas of science, tech, engineering, arts, and mathematics, in addition to financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and wellness. And so we're about 5 years old in our founding. And so I actually am in tech as well. I am a marketing leader for Meta, formerly known as Facebook, where I lead marketing and branding for the organization for underrepresented communities. And so I kind of like to think of what I do now as me just kind of being on my purpose since my time in high school, to be quite honest. I come from growing up in being a part of certain community programs that were free, that I started out attending programs for space programs. And I learned about space at an early age. And I was like 8, and my mom put me in this program at York College in Queens, New York. And this program was free. And so having had those experiences growing up in my community, I really was able to get the nourishment I needed from my community. And in high school, in college, in grad school, I took that with me and said, hey, what's my part? What can I do to help foster the next generation of XYZ? Started looking at the problems concerning girls and women, especially Black girls and women. And I identified the STEM gap. And I said, hey, I can do what was done for me at that age. And so I built a program. And while building a program, just attending a whole bunch of events, reaching out to girls in my community, say, hey, you know what? I got a couple of friends that work at Amazon, Apple, and a couple of places in tech, and I want you to meet them, right? Because representation matters. And from that, I kept building events, and the rest is history. I attended one event where Facebook was present, and I'll give you this tip or skill set that I take with me everywhere. I saw them there and I told them about my organization. I said, I have an organization named Black Girls Can. This is our purpose. This is our mission. I want you to know who I am and what we do. From that, they kept a conversation with me going, created a role for me. The rest is kind of history. So speak up, ask for what you want is definitely what I would say. But I'll stop there in terms of introduction and hand it back to you, Leanne.
Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to move to Whitney.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this discussion. I'm Whitney Larson, and I'm the co-founder and president of Vimos. We're a mobile payments and analytics company for the hospitality industry with the mission to help venues and brands create better relationships with their customers. And my journey into the tech industry, it sounds like, is a similar theme here. It isn't a traditional one. I didn't grow up knowing I wanted to be in this field, and I always found it overwhelming when I was younger, and people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up because I didn't have a specific answer for that. I found myself having interests in polarizing school subjects, which were math and English. And those two were my top subjects. I didn't feel like they belonged together. I ultimately chose English and went to the School of Journalism at the University of Minnesota. And it was here that I realized that my interest for English and great storytelling could be applied to growing businesses. I got involved with a lot of different internships to expose myself to how technology could help fuel businesses and help grow them. And so that's where I really started generating my interest in the digital world. And it was here that I met my business partner at college, where I really got immersed into what's truly the tech world, where we're building software companies. He's a great ally for girls getting involved in tech. He really helped me pave the way for me getting involved in tech. he really believed in my skill set and what I brought to the table. And so we realized early on that we had such opposite yet complementary skill sets to be able to scale our ideas in the tech industry and grow them into real companies that got in the hands of our customers, that help them enrich their lives. And so we've been building tech companies for the past 12 years and have had Vimos as our baby for the past 6 years now.
Awesome. Thank you. And Julie, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I am Julie Yak, and I'm one of the founders of 365 Training. We focus on Microsoft and Microsoft adjacent training content, both technical, quasi-technical, business-related things, because I think that something that a lot of people don't, I guess, really put words to thought is that there are so many places in tech that don't require you to be technical. And so how do we put that into words that resonate with you as an audience? And my path here sounds like, much like everyone else's, was non-traditional, but it sounds like maybe non-traditional is the traditional path, right? So I grew up in a large family. We didn't have money. We didn't have dreams. And because you were just going to do what everyone else had done before. And that wasn't what I wanted. And so for me, it was hard to find support. And I married young, had kids young, and it took a divorce and massive change in my perspective to motivate me to want more for myself. And then more for myself became more for my kids and more for everyone. And I once read that you become who you didn't have when you needed them. And so I feel a personal sense of obligation to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to see the chance in front of them if they want to take it.
Wow, thank you so much. And really thank you all for sharing your background, your stories with us. I'd like to open up our discussion really to all of the panelists. Much of our audience today is comprised of students with varying interests. You all have discussed your backgrounds. What advice would you give to students interested in STEM but unsure of where to start? Whether that's in like choosing courses or looking for internships, thinking of college majors, where should they start?
Well, I'll start. I don't think college is required. I think college is nice if that's what interests you. I think if you're unsure of where you want to go, college is a good place to have a soft landing to becoming an adult and explore different things that might have your interests, meet people with other interests. But I think that you can start anywhere, that college could be the place for you to start, but also a good training program, a good internship to hire program. Self-starters are all around us. And from where I sit, they're the ones that are most motivated and usually most successful. And hopefully that some of those technical programs that may not involve a 4-year degree get more recognition, because for me, those are the people that I've hired that have had the longest staying power. Those are the people that stick around the longest and grow the most.
I 100%. Oh,
go ahead, Rachel. Oh, I was going to say mine's a bit radical too, in that when I work with our students, I'm very quick to say, just always be learning, like be inquisitive, be curious, and really focus on what you like and what you don't like. Like you don't necessarily need to choose, right? You just need to know what you don't like doing and what you really like doing, what you care about, what are your interests, and focus on that. So I would always say, like, be open, take as many internships in many different types of components to tech and beyond, right? Because at this point, it's just exploring what's possible and knowing that there's possibilities on the other side of learning. And so when that happens, they uncover so much new levels and thoughts about themselves that they didn't even know that they liked. So I think one thing is just really ensuring whatever you guys do decide, just be open, be flexible, and always be asking questions, always be learning, and put curiosity at the forefront.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Rachel.
I was just gonna, second what's been second and third now what's been said, particularly around training programs and self-starters. Every hire that we've had at our team that's been most successful, particularly in the tech space, has been self-taught. And whether that is being at a city college, studying something completely different, or deciding that college wasn't for them and then going through like a coding course. It's really been a game changer if I look at that. And I also think when it's possible to take internships at startups or smaller emerging businesses, you'll get great exposure to all those different areas of a company that a lot of times in a larger organization, unless it's a train to hire program where they can put you in different slots, you don't really get the opportunity to see what it is you like and what you don't like. And you also don't necessarily get the opportunity to see where the different areas are that you may have never originally explored. But somebody, especially if you're somebody who's willing to say yes or try something new, and a startup environment, there's always going to be opportunity for that. And more startups, especially like decently funded ones, they don't have to be super well funded, but like decently funded ones, are making a push to bring in talent. So this is not like the free internship that you heard about that was not attainable for so many people, but they're putting into place like structured paid internship programs. So that way you can attract a greater diverse talent pool.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what's being said. And when it comes to focusing on what you like and what you don't like, the best way to find that out is to just try. And so even thinking before it's time to get an internship, when you're in school and you're still kind of exploring what you do and don't like, a lot of the ways to figure that out is to talk to people who are in the trenches. I know I did a lot of informational interviews when I was in high school, including college, just to understand what it was like working in the field and picking people's brains to kind of understand if I could see myself in those fields. I also think getting involved in organizations, and you can get involved in that as early as school days, as late as right now in my career, I'm involved in organizations, to be able to volunteer and get your hands dirty in a way that's not a real career, but you're still growing that skill set, and you really get to experiment with different types of jobs in the STEM field and see if that's something that resonates with you, and continue to build connections, but just don't be afraid to try. I think that's the most important thing.
Another opportunity when you're talking about like experiences in the field is I would look at some like international NGOs that exist. When I was in college, I worked at a hospital in Peru for a summer, and I have no medical training, or I was pre-med at the time, but no medical training. And I actually worked in a hospital, and any sort of informational interviews that I had done prior to then that would tell me one thing or another was nothing like that experience. And there's NGOs across the globe that are looking for energetic, excited people to, try their hands even for like a month or two at a variety of skills and verticals. So I would also look into those opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you. It sounds like the common theme I'm hearing is really moving with excitement. Having that self-starter attitude is so important. And really building on that, what key skills, whether technical or soft skills, have been most helpful to you in entering the tech space? And that's open to anyone.
I say there's two. And they're very non-technical skills, but they are courage and confidence. You need the courage to try and the confidence to know you can do it.
So well said. I 100% agree with that. I think that fraud, like the fraud concept, just like gets in the way a lot of times for our ability to move into these fields, especially as I mentioned, I was a journalism, French, and biology major. I was not a technologist in training or any degree. So to feel like I could lead a tech company and communicate effectively in the tech world took a lot of, I guess, courage and building confidence. I would also say tenacity. And the idea that, if this is something that you really want to do, it might not be easy the first 3 or 4 or 12 times. But, navigating and being patient and tenacious, which don't have to be conflicting, is, I think, incredibly valuable. And then communication skills. I think one of the advantages that many women have is our super ability to communicate. And many times that's lost in the world of technology, and technologists need communicators to help support what they're doing. And so don't think that the idea of technologist is purely coding all the time. But really, some of the most effective leaders in the world of technology are the ones that can translate code to product or whatever it may be.
I'd say agreeing with everyone. So in addition to that, I'd say like self-advocacy, right? So a lot of what we do in this space will require storytelling and showing up for yourself, but also showing up for the products you're creating, showing up for the apps you're developing, showing up for technology when there's like underrepresented people or that don't have access to tech, and being able to advocate for the community in which you represent and those beyond that. And so that's going to require you saying, hey, here's the resources I need to do my job, right? Here's the people we need in place, and here's the conversations we need to be having. And so that relationship building is kind of what gets you through to navigating. And oftentimes, like STEMists can have a bad rep of like not being so communicative. But as Rachel kind of stated, like relationship building is everything in any space, right? In anything you go to do, that's going to be a core fundamental component. And so it's really advocating for yourself, being able to build relationships that can sustain where you go in your career. And then realizing, some of those gaps and identifying the opportunities to really show up for yourself and the resources that you need to help get you there. So I definitely would say like honing into self-advocacy.
I love what Kanisha said in terms of also just show up. I think that like that is such a, just like being present and being energetic and being there is something that, is kind of faded in terms of like, oh, I'll just be relaxed about everything. But really the energetic, present, consistent, reliable person is so much more valuable sometimes than the more skilled or more trained person. So I would say like 10 to 1, I would always take that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And being curious, right? Like Kanisha, you said that right away, is be curious, continue to learn. A lot of this is super aspirational. And I think confidence is absolutely a soft skill that's so important. But I'll be the first to admit that I really struggled with my confidence, especially in the tech industry when I first got in here. And so how do you become confident in yourself? I think that's really important, especially for young girls who are growing in their skill set and who are growing in this career. It's something that my mentors always pushed me to tell me, you got to be confident in your skill set. You are really smart. You are valuable. And for me to be able to grow my skill set, the way that I was able to do that and build my confidence was to surround myself with other people who I felt like knew all the answers and I wanted to learn from them. And I quickly learned that none of us had the answers. We were all trying to figure it out. And so I just remained curious. I remained open and continued to learn, asking people who were in the trenches who I thought were smarter than me, reading up on my resources. But when I realized that even the people that I really aspired to be didn't have the answers, that made me feel more comfortable with the fact that I didn't have the answers and that some of my solutions they thought were really smart. And so that started to build up my confidence. And that was really just being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to put myself out there and diving in. But you don't walk into this space confident from day one. So it's very easy to say confidence is a skill set. That's a soft skill set in this industry, but really being able to put yourself out there and being vulnerable, asking the questions, coming to the table with some solutions, even if it's not the right solution. That's how you build your confidence over time.
So it sounds like none of us have said, go learn how to code in this language or these technical skills, right? Not one of us mentioned a technical skill. I think that the most valuable person on the team is someone that I call the funky tech, the person who is functional and understands how to solve the problem from a business perspective, and the person who can speak in technology and understand the technology, but then they put it together so that they can be the voice between technology and business. And that is the most valuable person on the team.
The person, I would like piggyback off of that too, the person who might be really interested in tech and coding and has like a basic understanding of a certain language, but if the need or the opportunity arises in something else, they can learn and fill in and do whatever is required. And I think that deals with the curiosity, the self-starter, the self-learning, because there's going to be there's so many different languages out there. And so being able to quickly adapt is a skill set, unless of course you love that's the other thing too, though. If you find out that you love your database work and backend work, then don't think that you need to be able to be like a functional everything person if you found like what you love to do, because that is a very, very valuable position. But don't feel like you have to be really good at that to be successful in tech.
Sure. And great conversation. And I'm really glad that we were able to touch on the idea of confidence and what does that look like of building up confidence. I'd like to pivot to you, Julie. Education and comprehensive training can be such an important piece to making someone feel more confident in their work and feeling like they can, confidently present that to their teams and their communities. Over the past 3 years, the way that we've had to learn and interact in the workplace has changed so much due to the pandemic. How can educators better prioritize providing access to girls, preparing them for jobs in STEM, not just, as you mentioned, in the technical space, but also just in general?
So all educators know that we've got different types of learners, and we all try to do our best to recognize that, tailor our approaches to each of them to the best of our ability and within the millions of constraints that we may have been given as educators. But sometimes it's about making the rest of her life calm down enough to give her the emotional energy she needs to be able to learn, to be able to get into the headspace of learning. As Chelsea mentioned, sometimes the child caring goes to the girls, even if it's just watching out for their siblings while mom and dad are at work. Or maybe there's food insecurities in the home. Maybe they've got non-supportive parents like I had. And so it's all those other busy things happening all around her that are more likely to limit her ability to learn than other constraints. So as educators, how can we help identify those problems that our students are having, and how can we help them find a place where they can learn? Too often the discussions find their way to money. Let's throw some money at this problem. And it's not always buying someone a new computer or making sure that they've got broadband. Those are important aspects, but making sure that she has the headspace available to her to be able to learn, I think, is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really expanding on that last question, since the theme of this year's Girls in ICT Day is access and safety, what do you think should be done to lower barriers to access and improving safety online for girls and young women? And this question is open to our entire panel.
Yeah, it's such an important question. And I think the access side, there's stuff that's been happening at the Congress level to make sure that there is access for all. We touched on it at the beginning of this panel. But what I also think is really important with girls being represented in ICT is not only female empowerment, and I love events like this where females get to learn from other females and we're all in this together, but I do strongly believe that male advocacy is important to bring the next level of female entrepreneurs and female innovators into this space. And in order for girls to have a seat at the table, they need to be taken seriously. And that comes from everybody in the room, not just females in the room. And I think exposing girls to groups that do have the like-mindedness of their male counterparts and making sure that it's not just female pitch competitions or female coder competitions, that they're working alongside the males. That's what truly gives people the right access. In terms of safety, I think one of my favorite ways to think about impacting change is think global, but act local. And change and access and safety all starts at the local levels and the communities in which we're a part of. And so making sure that your community is safe, that you're building up different ways in which girls can learn in a very safe and inclusive environment. And that includes everyone at the table.
We talked about broadband access, and that is something that was near and dear to my heart when we were building a home in rural Colorado and how hard it was to get broadband. And we had all of the resources available to us that we could possibly think of. And even then we had a hard time. I couldn't possibly imagine the difficulty of being 15-year-old me needing to have access to internet to be able to learn, to be able to submit my assignments, and having to be that girl in the Taco Bell parking lot. And so I think that making sure that we prioritize access for everyone, and through things like TV white spaces, through additional updates to the availability maps that we've got with the FCC, and helping to make sure that everyone has access through those means available is super important.
Yeah, I'd agree. One thing we're working on at Meta is product inclusion, right? So ensuring that as we build the next, right, like when we look at Web3, when we look at the metaverse, when we look at the next iteration of the internet, like what does that mean with all in mind, but specifically diverse communities? And so that's why I think it's so valuable that I enjoy this conversation so deeply, because when you're in the room, you show up and you show up on behalf of your experience and you speak to your experience, because when you do, the developers, the people that's actually creating the next thing that we're going to interact with, they need to know this level of knowledge, this level of experience. They need to know what our girls need in order to function in this new environment. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we don't speak up and we don't show up on behalf of these communities. And that's how we get there, right? I was just in a conversation about this, and they actually weren't building, we're actually talking about something. And I think I was the person in the room that said, hey, I think we should be thinking about diverse audiences and what that means for communities that don't even have access to X. And they say, gosh, Kenesha, we weren't even thinking about that. So you'd be surprised. Oftentimes you think the FANG, if you will, if you guys don't know what that is, it's Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, right? The top tech companies. You oftentimes think we have it all figured out. I think Whitney may have said this too. Like, under the hood, it's a lot going on, right? And so oftentimes you can think we're all planning for things, but we're not. So the best thing you can do is speak to your experience, because that is value add to anything that we're building next. So I agree with everyone, and I'll just kind of round it out with that. Show up based on your experience, because that will help build the next thing.
It's hard to follow that because that was so powerful. The only thing I wanted to add that's very different is just talking about safety. You spoke a little bit about, what can or should be done to, I know that as a mom of two young girls, even feeling like it's a safe place for them to be online and using the computers is very scary. And obviously they can there's so much that can be done from, big tech and even, smaller companies to create a safer environment where women want to work and be. And I can speak from personal experience that, being a woman in tech is not always, or in startups of the world is not easy. And so starting in the small ways that we can to surround them with mentorship, to surround them with sharing an environment to share their personal experiences safely is incredibly important. But also women supporting other women and teaching them at a young age what is acceptable in an anonymous environment. And I don't know the answers to that, but I know that it's a serious challenge, because bullying is just taking on like a whole new world. And if women and girls don't want to be eventually near their computers or on their phones or online and with their pulse on the next thing, it's going to be a detriment to their roles in those worlds.
Absolutely. And I would just like to take a pause and also mention that there is a feature where if you all listening have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions, and we can make sure we get those answered at the end. I would like to turn back to Kanisha, if I can. You expanded on this before, but I'm hoping you can dive a little bit deeper. As founder of Black Girls Can and as an overall community engagement leader, how important is having representation, seeking mentorship, and building relationships when trying to enter the STEM workforce? Can you kind of dive into that a little bit further?
Yeah, for sure. You started out with data, and I tend to arm myself with the same around where we are in terms of Black girls and access to tech. And then, so 28% of women, right, are in the STEM-driven roles. But when you look at Black women that possess these roles, it's less than 3%. And so when we think about strides, right, we're seeing over the last year or so, I'd say we've seen strides to ensure that we be better about hiring on the manager level for roles in tech. But I'm often armed with this data to say like, hey, like there's so much work we need to do here, right? We're less than 3, followed behind Asian, then Hispanic, then and then, white women. And so when you look at that, you think, how are we ensuring that we're ushering in the next generation when there's like less than us here? One thing I've been able to do, I've been fortunate, right, to have friends that work in this space and say to them, hey, I need you to get in front of girls that I know, because this is the only way they're going to see possibility. I'll give you a story and say, I had some girls I was working with in Queens, New York. I'm really, really in my community. So when I say that I'm involved in church, I'm involved in community organizations. And so I meet a ton of young girls and find out what schools they go to. Our organization is now with all NYC public schools and DC public schools. So we're a vendor of NYC and DC public schools. And so through that, I've been able to usher in our programming. But in working with some of our girls, we work in inner cities. We find that I met this one girl, I remember her name being Jasmine, and she said to me, I'm going to work at the racetrack when I get older because my mom works at the racetrack. She makes good money, and I'm going to work at the racetrack because she said that it makes good money. And like, that was her view, right? That was her possibility. She saw that that's what her mom did, friends around her, it was very similar. She didn't see anything beyond that. And so I knew then I needed to show girls beyond their environment. A lot of my girls that I work with haven't gone out of their borough. They have not left Queens, New York, right? They have not left Southeast DC. And so in knowing that, I have to take them out of it so that they can know what's real and what's possible, and they can see somebody that looks like them. And so I was fortunate enough to have friends that work in that space to offer them experiences. I think you guys all mentioned it, like a day in the life, job shadowing. Whitney, I think you said it. And so they then get job shadowing experiences to see like what it's like to be a backend developer, what it's like to be a software engineer, like what does this look like? And they get the day and say, oh, this isn't for me. And Jasmine left, we did an experience at Amazon. She left that experience saying, it was a tech and fashion experience, and she was interested in fashion. She's like, oh, wow, like I can couple my interest with tech. Like I didn't even know that this was possible. And now, like several years later, she's gone on, this was like a minute ago, but she's gone on to do really great things, have really great internships with a number of tech organizations and beyond. And I just say it to say, like, oftentimes we can think that, because they have their phones, that they see possibility, but they don't, because their greatest possibility is in their home and in their school environment. And Black Girls Can, we stand in the gap to let you know, if it's not in school, if it's not at home, you're going to see it and we're going to take you there. And so if you ever want to know like what organizations can help, sometimes it's not going to be in your school environment. Sometimes it's not going to be in your home environment. It's going to take external organizations. And we're one where we're free, www.blackgirlscaninc.org. Feel free to take advantage of access to programs that are free. There's a number of organizations that are funded to support this gap, this STEM gap. So I say that to say it's important because it may not be in their community. And I think Julie said it, which was so powerful. You're going to have to be what you don't see.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's interesting to really think about how limited your viewpoint can be when you're not able, like you said, to like leave your bureau or leave Southeast DC or leave these communities. And it's really important to continue to make space for all different types of girls, and really expanding being owners and having stake in that space as well. Women own roughly 36% of small businesses worldwide, generating around $1.9 trillion in revenue. So I'd like to turn to Rachel as founder of Upside Health. What role should entrepreneurship play in bridging the gender gap in STEM, and how can we better support young innovators?
I think there's a couple of ways that we can do this well. One of them is where we look for how we build internship programs, right? The idea that traditionally internship programs or job shadowing happen at big organizations, or you have to work for free at a startup. That can't work if you're going to build a diverse environment. Secondly, I think it's where we look for hires and how we look for hires. Are we going to the same places, the same, job sites or whatnot to recruit and educate talent? I think the other thing that we can do well is by bringing on the more that we start bringing on interns, the more that we start looking for people and hiring based off of complementary skill sets, not necessarily previous jobs, we'll be able to bring into the environment. These people have actually kind of similar story to Kenisha's in the sense that we have our billing and operations manager at our company who was an office manager at a medical practice. And her mom also operate a practice manager at a small practice in Georgia. And she had never worked in tech, never thought about doing anything other than working as a office manager or office admin within a medical practice. And now she's gone to conferences for us and sales. She's like, I really like this. She's also now, can I hire my mom? She's a whole network of friends. But the idea and other colleagues and coworkers that always thought that as a mom with kids in a small town, the only job that you have is, and especially with maybe a 2-year degree, is this. But her skill sets were exactly what we needed because she has billing and CM experience with insurance companies. That's exactly what we needed in this role. And so continuing to, from us, like I said, looking for talent in different places, looking for what we need, not where they went. I think doing panels like this, and similarly hosting whenever we can, hackathons, pitch events in different places so they can feel the excitement of what this is like. I also think that as much as possible, any like industry trade shows, any big tech events, there should be free or discounted or accessible tickets for high school and college students through an application process. Because again, like if it's going to cost you $1,500 just to get a ticket to see what opportunities are available, that automatically eliminates opportunities. And then the last thing is how we run pitch events. I was at a pitch event once that was a skiing pitch event. And the idea was to bring it out of like the traditional event, but like really who skis? Able-bodied people, wealthy people, people that don't have other responsibilities that they can not be on the slopes for the day. And so if we're going to create environments that are conducive and supportive, we have to start also where the entrepreneurs want to be. So a lot of thoughts on this, but there's just a few of them. So thank you.
No, that's perfect. And thinking of the skills that entrepreneurs have, I'd like to turn to Whitney, if I can, as president of a thriving startup. How does marketing and business acumen factor when entering the tech world? And what are some important tools students can use to improve these skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it was my marketing and business acumen that's allowed me to excel in the tech industry without any formal computer sciences background. And what I had to learn throughout building our company was trusting the innate skill set that I brought to the table. We talked about it before, having confidence in the value I bring. Because while it's my team of developers that we lead who develop the actual software product, I personally play an important role in leading that direction of prioritizing which features we should build based on growing our market share. I need to think through the end user experience of someone actually interacting with our product to give that direction to our development team. And perhaps even more importantly, from a marketing perspective, I breathe life into our software by getting it in the hands of real paying customers who rely on our technology to enrich their lives. And that last part is what's so rewarding for me personally. And so what I want people to take away from this, from my personal journey, is that there is no one path into entering the tech world. Marketing and business is just as valuable as entering the tech world as actual coding skills. There's a lot of roles I know we've talked about that fit within tech. And so the tools is just to continue to remain curious, try things out, make sure that you're exposing yourself to different learning opportunities. And I think that, Rachel, you said it best, that we as a group of entrepreneurs need to make it more accessible to people to be able to find those enriching opportunities for them. Accessibility is so important to finding these roles, but business acumen, marketing acumen is just as valuable as hard coding skills when it comes to building technology-based businesses.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions from our audience that I'd like to get into as our time is coming quickly to a close, unfortunately. Let's see here. So one question we have here that I think expands a bit on the question I asked you, Julie. While students may choose a variety of pathways post-high school, what we know is that K through 12 is a requirement. How do K through 12 educators better prepare students or serve as a resource for students to these opportunities, particularly for schools without computer science programs or under-resourced in other ways?
Great question. My kids went to public school. They went to what we call locally a technology track, where the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, all of them were tech-based schools. And we had several different schools in the area come to us and ask, tell us how to be a tech school. What class do we need to teach? And it's not about a class. It's about immersion, using tech at every opportunity within the curriculum that you've been given to teach. So finding those opportunities to encourage making a presentation using some software, or any opportunity whatsoever to expose those students to technology, take it. And it's more about immersion than a piece of equipment. It's more about immersion versus a specific course. And if you still have limitations that prevent that from happening, problem solving. That is a skill set that will take you far. A popular job title in my world these days is solution architect. And while that sounds really fancy, that's a problem solver. It's a person who takes a step back, recognizes the pieces of the problem, and puts them back together in a way that solves the problem. And that will take you far, whether you're in tech or any other career.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question we have here is speaking more on the policy level. Working in Congress, we can push for members to co-sponsor bills like the Computer Science for All Act, but what can policymakers do on the local level? What is the call to action, and or what resources or reports should be top of mind for local leaders? Do we have any perspectives on that? I think it's really important to be involved with local school boards, really making your voice heard on the local level. Any thoughts or opinions from our panelists on that?
I think that oftentimes that local elections are more important than the big elections that we all see the push for, because local elections determine where those smaller funds go, where when the state gives a directive to educators that you must meet these 5 criteria, right? Students must pass this test or whatnot. It's some of those local decisions that determine where the money goes to make those things a possibility. And so just having an awareness of what happens at that local level will have a great impact, let alone if more women and more minorities get involved. I live in an area that's very predominantly a lot of people that look like me, and I'd like to think that I have the ability to see beyond that, but to be able to truly get that view, we need everyone involved.
Absolutely. And I'd like to close us out combining 2 questions here that we got from our audience. The first is, what is the one moment when you knew that you were meant to be in tech, and confirmed, it basically confirmed your confidence and your abilities in the space? And if you could go back and speak to your kid self before entering the tech space, what advice would you give to your younger selves? So I would like for everyone to answer this and give your closing remarks.
So my moment is things like this, where someone sees my impact or my success as worthy of sharing with other people. That to me is something I would never have imagined. And going back to speak to my younger self, look for more opportunities. We've several times have brought up how people just do what has always been done, and look for opportunities to see if that's the right choice for you.
For me, I'm in tech and healthcare, which is an incredibly unique environment in the fact that healthcare moves very, very slowly. And so being able to see the impact of our work often feels obviously like an intense delayed gratification, even if a product is available right away. And so I think one of the things that has been super meaningful to me is to be able to do something through technology in healthcare that wouldn't be possible without technology. And then to feel like I've been behind that. So, when a patient uses our product and they say, when I go on branch, I don't feel alone because I've been able to connect and get the support from other people who are going through this, right? That's something that makes me feel like I picked the right path, the right way to communicate and to mobilize what we're trying to accomplish. But more so than that is to see, again, the members of our team grow and flourish and evolve in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do. I mean, it's a little bit entrepreneurship, a little bit tech, but would not have been able to do in as like a cog in the wheel of a large corporation.
My moment of knowing that I belonged in tech was actually in college. I'd mentioned that I met my business partner in college, and we had met on a class project of creating a fake company. And I was in charge of assisting with the marketing plan component of it. My business partner, being who he is, launched the company for real. And it was the first time that we saw our product in the hands of consumers actually using it. And that's when I realized that I felt so rewarded and so empowered to be a part of this, and that something that I thought of and could create came to fruition and is really helping people flourish in their own lives. And so that was the moment that I realized that I really wanted to be in this space and I wanted to continue down the entrepreneurial path. And then what gave me confidence in this space is when people started asking me for my own opinion of how they should move forward, either in business or in technology, and being seen as a thought leader in the space continued to build up my confidence. If I were to go back to my kid self, I always have struggled with feeling like I needed to know the answers, a little bit of perfectionism as a child in school, straight A student, involved in every organization you could think of. And so if I were to go back to my kid self, it would just be to have grace and to be willing to be okay with not knowing the answers, and that life is a journey to continue to explore, and you're going to continue to evolve in ways that you never thought that you could.
Okay, I guess I'll round us out. So when I knew my confidence in tech, I think it would be when we would approach a new project, a new campaign, and I was always asked, like, we can't do this without you, Kenesha. We need you in the room. We need you on this project. We need you on this campaign. We need your perspective. And repeated success is something that I enjoy, where I was set out to do a certain thing, and then other leaders from other business units said, hey, like, you did this so well. Can you come over here and help us with this? And so in having that, I was like, okay, well, like, I'm really seen as like a thought leader that they feel like, based on their projects, like, it needs my voice, it needs me in the room. And like, that's pretty valuable. But I think most importantly is like, I created something on my own, Black Girls Can Incorporated, right? And I'm a vision of my mission statement. I actually am living in my purpose. That's the biggest gratification that I can ever get. So I'm so grateful that I'm aligned and I'm a purpose-driven marketer, but person. So I'd say that biggest advice I give to my younger self: be gentler. I think Whitney hit it. I was definitely hard on myself, and I know it got me to where I am today, but I then think about, what could it be if I was gentler, right? Like, on myself, softer on myself, and softer on others. I give the empathy on others. I'm gentle with others, but I'm not so gentle with myself. So be gentler with myself. And I know we talked about a lot of things, but just to kind of make it practical in terms of confidence and showing up in the room, I would say one thing that you all can do is, like, if you're attending a meeting or if you're in a classroom, actually, like, give yourself 3 questions. Like, okay, I'm going to ask 3 questions in this meeting. I'm going to ask 3 questions in this class. That I want to make it so practical that you know what it looks like to be confident or be inquisitive. So ask yourself 3 questions the next time you're in a meeting, the next time you're in a discussion, the next time, to just, and don't feel the need to think that your question is silly. They want to just know that you're interested and curious. So start there. And then if you hear somebody else saying something that you said in a meeting, like, that's how you know you should say the thing. So always say what's on your mind, give your perspective, because it's valuable. So say what's in your head, because oftentimes others are thinking it too. Those are my tidbits. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. And really thank all of you so much. We could easily keep going on this topic of celebrating girls in tech for much longer than a webinar's length. But our time is up, unfortunately. I'd again like to thank our amazing panel, just dynamic women who have dedicated their time and resources to really living their mission. And I'd like to thank the Amplify Diverse Talent Group at the App Association. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you who are joining us today. Thank you for listening, for taking the time out of your day. For girls to thrive in the STEM and ICT space, there must be investment in education and empowerment from their communities. Here at ACT, we understand the importance of creating space for the best and the brightest to join careers with lots of opportunity to grow and develop. We hope that you leave us feeling inspired and informed with new insights on the many opportunities a career in STEM can offer. And thank you so much. And we hope to see you soon.